Hello, I'm Matthew Gavidia. Today in the MGH Life Sciences Medical World News, the Center for Biosimilars is pleased to welcome Cheryl Larson, President and CEO of the Midwest Business Group on Health. What negotiating power do employers have that enables them to wrest some of the power away from payers and middlemen?
So we developed several years ago, but pretty recently, a different way of looking at how to manage drugs by taking some of the power and responsibility away from PBMs, the things that they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. So we have replicated a model that our employer member Caterpillar has been doing for 15 years. They're saving millions of dollars annually. They're decreasing patient out-of-pocket costs and prescription costs for them. And they're doing that first and foremost through contract optimization. And I'll often say, if your PBM won't optimize the contract so that you benefit more than them, maybe that's not the right PBM. But these contract optimization strategies define all contract terms and pricing so that all PBM revenue is transparent and retained by the employer. All relationships are free of conflicts, and you can use any PBM you want. You're agnostic to the PBM. So if your PBM says no, or they're not willing to do some of these things, find another PBM that will. You must have regular audits integrated into the contract so that conditions and terms are met. This model supports fiduciary obligation to act in the best interests of beneficiaries and the employer as the plan sponsor. And then there's formulary customization. So they're not deciding what is on the formulary. You're working with a team of physicians and pharmacists like Caterpillar does to make coverage decisions based on clinical efficacy, evidence, lowest net cost, and the clinical value. And then these employers are doing direct contracting with retail pharmacies. And this is unique. You don't need 10 to 15,000 pharmacies across the country. There's a pharmacy within 5 minutes of most people. And if there's not, you add independent pharmacies to that model. And the network is designed to the plan sponsor's needs, not to the intermediary's needs. Again, we're looking at cost plus equals ingredient cost. So cost plus equals ingredient cost plus the margin, because they need to make a little bit of money, right? It's really important in your contract that you have carve-out rights for specialty and mail order, because a lot of money is made through that. And then finally, because you've got this independent P&T committee who is not making decisions based on rebates, but on clinical efficacy, you're saving money there, and they're helping to manage the PA process, which is really important. So, I always tell people the 5 things: ensure your PBM contract has clear objectives and definitions. Collect the money that you're owed. We don't love rebates, but if rebates are on the table, get those rebates, but don't let them drive formulary decisions. Make sure that your contract stays competitive using annual market checks. You have to have those rights in your contract, and also you have to have the right to terminate your contract early if you want. Long gone are the days where you had a 3-year contract, which is all many PBMs and other players were allowing back then. You need to get a 90-day out clause, or even less than that, if they're not meeting your needs. You need to make sure your contract includes carve-outs. And honestly, we think eventually there might be employers that are contracting directly with pharmaceutical manufacturers. So you might want to have that in there. And then, of course, negotiate directly with retail providers.
Just to build off that, is there much that small to mid-sized employers can do?
In terms of the traditional PBM model, there is not, until the big PBMs create a product offering on the biosimilar side, or figure out a way to make money on it, or figure out a way to increase money in other areas so that they're not going to make money on the biosimilars just to keep their customers happy. A lot of PBMs tell us all the time, we just do what our customers tell us. But we know that there's a lot of things that they don't do. And I can't imagine their customers are saying don't include biosimilars. They need to be educated, and we do that through helping them understand what other employers, large employers, are doing, we become their voice for change. Our model is an example of a model that doesn't have intermediary influence. It's removing a number of things. You know, we're not saying PBMs still can't do data reports or negotiate rebates or do the claims administration. Those things are still important. But there are things that they shouldn't be doing. They're, again, misaligned incentives. And so this model that we created works for smaller, mostly mid-sized employers. You know, it's hard, and if you're fully insured as a smaller employer, you know, you're at the mercy of whatever the plan design is, although there's an incentive for the plan, the health plan to, you know, keep costs low. But if you're self-insured as a smaller or mid-sized employer, and for us, that would be in the range of 500 employees to 5,000, you know, we can work with you to offer some of these services.
Can you discuss some key action steps that employers can take to get biosimilars into their health plan?
Sure. So one of the first things, and we talk about this in our biosimilars report, is to get that FDA list of approved biosimilars. And you need to get it to your carrier, your health plan, and the PBM, and say, I want this added to my formulary, and then figure out how to best adopt them. So the report talks about if a biosimilar is indicated for administration through the medical benefit, you got to talk to your carrier and consider a carve out to the pharmacy benefit to ensure equal management. So when biosimilars are indicated for dispensing through the pharmacy, talk to your PBM and make sure proper medication therapy management measures are in place. That is so critical. And then you need to clearly define biosimilars in your contract. You've got to also, like you do with other things, make sure that your contract indicates you have 100% pass-through of all rebates received and that audit rights are in place. That still applies. There's a number of other things like tracking utilization. The list goes on. Make sure you have a link to it, but there's a number of things that employers can do to talk to their stakeholders about to manage this. Everything from PA to clinical criteria, you know, even looking at making sure that based on the disease state and the drug, is there a pharmacogenomic test that's part of it? In setting a big one that we don't talk about a lot is kind of a value-based benefit design. If an employee, if you're going to drive that employee to using a biosimilar like you do with the generic, you should incent them through plan design, whether it's reduced or waived copays or changes to coinsurance, something like that. As we said earlier, we recommend, you know, having biosimilars be the first step if you're a new patient, just like generics first. And so this is going to be a challenge for the marketplace where employers are going to have to educate themselves. They're going to have to empower themselves to talk to their partners and then encourage their partners to be more innovative in this space.
How valuable can employee education be in raising use of biosimilars? You kind of alluded just to this, but what kind of struggle is involved here?
So when we started our National Employer Initiative on Specialty Drugs, one of the first things we did was do a consumer education or employee education, member education piece about what specialty drugs were and importance of compliance, importance of a relationship with your physician. The same is going to have to happen with biosimilars, and we'll probably be building that out in the next year. And then we make this information available not just to our members, but any employer in the country, because we think it's that important. And so we're going to encourage, just as we did before, our members to cut and paste whatever will resonate within their word count, in their health newsletters, in their benefits information. But once they make that transition, education needs to go out to employees to help them understand that even though it's not an exact replica of the drug, it is equally efficacious and will cost them less.
What is the Midwest Business Group on Health doing to help employers get a leg up on biosimilar use?
since they first came out and we just started educating them, there was a lot of confusion. There was misinformation. There was minimal support by the community, both on the medical and pharmacy side and provider side. I've seen a significant change in the role of educating employers from 6, 7, 8 years ago, whenever it was. This time, employers are paying more attention. They're much more sophisticated about understanding pharmacy benefits. Cost savings is more critical than ever, and then add COVID-19 onto that, so cost savings are really going to be critical. They're looking at things that are easy to do, turnkey, and that's the role of the coalition. So we do webinars, we've done several reports as I talked about, but we're not going to stop doing it. We're going to continue to bring this out. Again, recognizing we don't want somebody taken off a med that is working well, but there is definitely a place for biosimilars.
What are your hopes for legislative cure and any hope for the executive actions recently signed by President Trump?
I do not think anything will happen until 2021, but never say never. There could be some surprise legislation. I just hope it's not misguided, that it is moving in the correct way and not influenced by any key stakeholder. You know, employers don't have individual lobbyists on the Hill like some of the other major players in the marketplace. And there's a right way to do this and not a right way. So I just don't see anything happening at the earliest till 2021, and COVID has something to do with that, but the election definitely has something to do with that.
To what extent are biosimilar manufacturers willing to partner with employers? Have you seen any instructive examples?
They have come to us to talk about their concerns in the last few years about the lack of employer adoption. And we recognized already what the barriers to utilization have been, and I talked about those earlier, and those have not changed. But we see this as low-hanging fruit. And anytime we see something in the marketplace that can be considered a way to better manage cost, I don't say reduce costs, I say better manage costs. If you get better patient outcomes or you do reduce costs, it's fantastic. But it's about better managing costs. So this is low-hanging fruit. So we've got to make the case, because we've learned a lot in the last 5, 6 years on what biosimilars are, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are. There are other nonprofit entities like ours that are doing some great stuff in this space, including your organization. So getting that knowledge and information out there is key. I think education and examples are going to be critical.
And lastly, do you have any other concluding thoughts?
Absolutely. Again, because we represent employers and we're passionate about supporting their needs, and this is a tough time in the country, we are going to continue to bring best practices from employers that are willing to stick their neck out and be disruptors. We're going to continue to work on better managing the costs and outcomes of specialty drugs, and that includes biosimilars. And we're going to continue to not have the burden of all healthcare costs in this country fall on employers that don't have the ability to negotiate prices like the government does. And by doing so, we can stay in the healthcare system, but there's a lot of changes that need to be made by key stakeholders, and they're not ready to do that. And we want to be partners with them. And we've been really busy, and we plan on continuing to be busy and supporting the needs of our employer members.
To learn more, visit our website at centerforbiosimilars.com. I'm Matthew Gavidia. Thanks for joining us.